In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use tints, shades, and tones to create a sparkly effect on a faceted gem painting. So, first of all, when you go to set up, you're going to need placemat paper, which is under the black arrow. And I would like you to start with your tints. Now remember, a tint is the hue that you choose plus white. And we're going to, as we paint each value onto the gem, we're going to just record it on here. So our number 1 value is going to be our lightest tint. And if you need a little reminder about value scales and things, you can always refer back to that warm-up worksheet that we did. So first thing that we want to do is actually make our first tint completely white. So you're going to dip your brush, and remember, we just dip the tip, we don't go up to the ferrule. That's how you're going to be able to have a lot of control. And I would like you to just paint inside each of these facets. Now you can use a smaller brush if you would like, but I always recommend kind of doing the outer edges first and then working your way in when you're doing flat painting. I'm going to actually switch to a smaller brush. And notice when I'm doing this, I'm kind of staying within these little tiny shapes that are created within shapes by the lines crossing over. So for example, I'm not painting this whole shape white. I'm only going to paint this triangle that's part of it, because when this line crosses over it, it kind of closes that shape off. So it's like shapes within shapes. That's the thing that we're going to be painting. So I would spread this value around, and if you notice, I'm not just painting one area. I am kind of trying to balance where I have this value so that it looks like the light is kind of like bouncing off of each other throughout all of the facets. Now I could always go back in and add more later if I'd like, but for now I'm pretty happy with the amount of really white values that I have. So I'm just going to mark that off on here where it says number 1. So I don't have to fill in the whole thing perfectly, just marking it off. Now for my lightest tint, I am going to just pull a little bit of magenta into it. So you can bring this directly into here. I recommend doing that so that you can have a lot of it. Now, if you notice when I'm doing this, I'm pulling the paint into the center, and I'm using a bigger brush as almost like a mixing brush, and then I can use a different brush, or I can at least clean this off and get the excess paint off of it when it's time for me to paint my next value. So I'm pulling that all into the center so that I still have a nice little pile of color. So I'm not going to use this brush because it's all globby, so I'm going to wipe the excess off and put that in my cup of water. And remember, if you're washing your brushes in between, which I recommend you do, please just make sure that you dry them off thoroughly so that you don't wind up getting like kind of watery paint. So now I would find different facets, and again, I'm going to spread this color all around. So I'm going to do that with each of my tints, and I'm going to have them gradually get darker until I get to my hue. So I don't want to spend time showing you how I'm doing every single one of these, because this will be like a 40-minute video, and I don't want you to have to watch that because that's actually shorter. Our class period is not even 40 minutes. So I am going to just let you know that I'm going to spread this all over, and then I would gradually, so then I would mark this off. And then for my next tint, I would just add a little bit more color to it and get it a little bit darker. And again, I'm pulling into the center so that I have a nice pile, because if you swirl it all around, one thing that can happen is it can get knocked into there, and then your color gets kind of messed up. And on top of that, your paint that you mix dries out faster. So you want to pull it into the center. And you want to mix it until there's no more streaks of color, so that it's one even tone, so that a tint, so that you have control over it. Okay, so I would then paint this in a spot. Okay, and I would spread that all over, and then I would document that one. And then same thing, I'm gonna add some more. Now this is gonna be my number 4 tint. This is gonna be kind of my darkest tint before I get to my hue. Now a hue is the pure color on the color wheel. So again, I would paint this on here. So this is sort of a darker tint, but still in the tint family because it's very light, but I'm going to document it here. Now I'm going to switch to just my pure hue. So you want to make sure your brush is completely dry, completely clean and dry, so there's no white in it. And then you're going to just have the hue, so the straight up color from the bottle, with no other colors mixed into it. And again, I would make sure that I put these values all over the place. So I would put some here, some here, some here, and you want to kind of just spread them around. And obviously I would be painting those in each time. Then what I'm going to do after I do my hue is I'm going to actually get a new palette. And I'm going to get my hue plus black, and I'm going to start to make my shades. So now the black you want to really use sparingly, which means only a teeny tiny bit. So I'm going to start out with an itty bitty bit, and I'm going to mix it in. And again, I'm pulling into the center, and it's just going to make a little bit of a darker magenta. Now another trick when you're mixing tints and shades on a value scale, if you want to see that they're different from the last one, you can hold it over it and see if there's enough contrast. So I feel like that is not enough contrast, so I'm going to add a tiny bit more black. You can always add black, but you can't take it away. So I find that it's best to do it a tiny bit at a time gradually, so that you don't wind up with the wrong one. Now that seems better. Okay, so from here again, I'm going to paint this value in. You see it's kind of like a raspberry color. Sorry, I'm doing this quickly, so it's a little sloppy, and I'm using a big brush. And again, I would sort of spread this color all over the place, which is what I would do with all of my tints and shades. Oh, I should not put it there. Don't put two colors next to each other. Bad idea. Now for my next one, I'm going to add a little bit more black. Again, swirl it around. Okay, and each time I'm going to do this until I've reached the very end of the scale where my last shade is like almost black. You really want it to be very, very dark, because what happens is the gem is picking up other colors in the room where it is, and it could be picking up blacks or things like that. Now again, you're not doing dots, you're painting each one, but I don't want this to be a really super long video. So now I want to take some black, scoop it over here, take some of my last darkest shade, mix it together like 50-50, and I have a shade that's very, very dark. Now you don't have to use a lot of this one if you don't want. It's just good to put in a couple little places. Now we're going to make some tones. So a tone is not going to go on your value scale, but I would like you to document like 2 or 3 of them on here that you've made. So you're going to mix black and white together to make gray, and then you're going to pull your color in to it. And what this does is it literally tones down the color, so it makes it less saturated and more sort of grayish looking. So it would be like that. So you can paint that in a few areas. Okay, and again, you want your gem to look brilliant, so you don't have to use too many tones. You can also make a very light one. Kind of very pretty colors in here. Okay, so again, you would spread that around a little bit. And then maybe, whoops, sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to document that. And then maybe I'll make like an ultra light one, because I really liked that light one. Okay, so you would make sure that all of the facets are filled in. If you missed a couple and you want to go back in with one of your favorites, like I really love this one or this one, you can go back in. But in the end, you want to make sure that you have every facet filled in with paint. Now, if you're feeling up for a little bit of a challenge, you can also blend within facets. So I'll show you how to do that on one of them. So let's say, for example, you wanted to do some blending on here. You would just go from dark. So right now I'm using a pure hue. And then I'm mixing a step 4 into it. And this is really like, this is gonna really increase the realism of your gem. So if you feel like you can do this, I would love to see that. And then you can mix a little bit more of a tint and gradually get lighter. And a little bit more of a tint and gradually get lighter. And this is actually really kind of fun and relaxing to do too. To do these little blended areas like this. And it really adds some beautiful realism to your piece. But this is a little bit more advanced, so I understand that if you're just starting out, you don't have to do that. Okay? Good luck and have fun.